Hello, cats and kittens. Oliver Jose, Yonoshku. I'm back in the crisis going on Manga Monday. I'm a little late with, a lot late, with my impressions on One Piece 51 through 53. So since One Piece is on break this week, I'm going to go ahead and do 51 and 52. My impressions on 51 and 52. And then next Monday, kick in with my impressions on 53. The title of 51 is I Get the Idea. The good guys are in a very, very, very tight spot. The situation now appears that Emu is essentially playing a game, Reversi, which is basically each player has different colored tiles, and if your tile, black and white, and if your tile gets caught between your opponent's colors, then your color flips to black or white. So actually, and whoever has the most pieces on the board at the end wins. So the goal of the game is to flip as many of your opponent's colored tiles to your color. And if you have the most of your color on the board at the end of the game, you win. Now, the means by which this is done, this demonic contract or whatever that is very broken in the respect that you flip regardless of your will. Your turn. It's just what it is. Once you sink down into that little hole and come back up, you're on Emu's side, and it's no fighting it or whatever. It's like a personality reversal or whatever. And Dorian Broggy is caught up in it. That's it. They're fighting on Emu's side. They're striking down their own teammates. And if you get caught physically between, like as one of the Giants got caught physically between Dorian Broggy, and they just flip and turn evil just like Dorian Broggy. You get wings and you get a power boost, and you're just evil at that point. So this is a very broken power, and it looks very bad for the good guys. Not only that, we know that the nightmares of the children can't be killed. And as long as the children are having these nightmares, more nightmare creatures will appear. So you got allies being turned into enemies and nightmare monsters running around, fueling the chaos. And it just looks like an untenable situation. Despite that, Jinbei is an interesting character in that he doesn't seem fazed by any of this. He never seems fazed by anything. He makes a comment. It looks to me like things have gotten pretty hairy. Understatement, but I like Jinbei's cool. He's been a warlord of the sea. He's been through this. He's been through that. He's going to remain calm. I'm curious as to if he's ever seen anything like this before. Is he staying calm because, I've seen something like this before? No, probably not. I don't know if he's ever run across a guy's Knights or, I don't know. His background in that respect, I don't know. But he's remarkably composed under this situation, but that just might come with age. He's the oldest member of the Straw Hat. Now, Brookite is the oldest, but he's up there. He's experienced. He's an experienced pirate. So he's not going to wig out easily. I'm just curious to see when he gets loose from the restraints, the thorn restraints that they're under. Will he be able to do anything against the... He can probably take down some of the creatures, Against the Knights themselves, I would think not. The Giants probably, because he's a powerful cat. So he could probably take down some of the Giants, but I don't see him taking down any of the Knights. We'll get to that later. So yeah, that situation is pretty bad. Then we find out what happened to Gabon. He falls into the underworld. And I was calling for the return of Brain Point Scope. I'm hideously disappointed. It's what it is. So we're never going to see Brain Point Scope again. And Chopper's usefulness is pretty much sidelined to, again, being a doctor, which is what he is. My hopes and dreams have been crushed. So there's that. So, but he does succeed in saving Scapa Gavan from imminent death. He uses his guard point to cushion the fall and save Scapa from being killed. Once in the underworld, we finally catch up with Luffy, Sanji, Zoro, and them, and they Luffy actually notices through his observation, I suppose, that specifically Chopper fell down from the underworld and from the upper level down into the underworld, and there was somebody with him. But even he doesn't realize how he knows that that's Chopper, which is odd because he has observation haki. He has future sight to a certain degree, but he doesn't know how he knew specifically that that was Chopper. I don't know if that's related to the voice of all things. Is that related to just straight future sight observation, whatever? Even Loki noticed that somebody fell. Sanji and Zoro didn't. So their observation is not as keen as Luffy or Loki's. So there's that. So they find out furthermore that, first of all, Loki gets a call from Shaggy, whoever that is, which is interesting. This person that he's been in communication with on the Denden Mushi tells him that, he's calling basically with a final farewell, I always appreciated you, buddy, blah, blah, blah. Loki makes he makes a statement. He says, let me see, where am I? Don't tell me, are you in danger again somehow? That's an interesting statement to me because there's a lot of speculation that Shaggy is Juro. And he's calling from the upper level, knowing that, everything's in chaos. Elbaf is about to fall. Uh, if that's the case, I'm curious as to, he says, are you in danger again somehow? What is the reference to the first time or the past time that he was in danger? So if there was Juro, would Gerd have recognized his voice? Because she's standing not that far from Loki while he's taking this transmission. She would have heard that voice and, made the connection. But that's going to play itself out relatively shortly. Aside from that, now we find out that Luffy and the rest of the gang finally find out that Scopper was indeed the left wing of the Pirate King, or the left hand man of the Pirate King, and they're shot. They didn't know this, but there's no time to breathe really because there's a sudden burst of haki from the upper level, and they realize that something horrible is happening up there. Chopper actually makes himself useful and gives a report that there's monsters running around and Elbaf is in chaos, so and so. And at this point, Luffy's like, "Okay, I get it. They're about to go into action." And Loki's saying, "Hey, you're gonna need my power on this." Okay, that's our cliffhanger. Moving on to the next chapter, 1152, which is entitled A Horrible Day. We continue where we left off, essentially. Loki has been patched, not Loki, Scopper has been patched up to a reasonable degree by Gerd or Chopper or a combination of the two. They're about to go back up to the upper level to deal with the situation in Elbath on the upper level, but Loki insists on coming. Harridan isn't hearing it, but Scopper warns Luffy and he tells him, he says that to, let me see, he tells him, he says, make a mental note of how you use your color of the Supreme King. They are not immortal. Luffy says, thanks, I got this one. I don't think he knows exactly what he's talking about, but he says, I'm going to save Colin and everyone else. That's just Luffy being Luffy. But the interesting thing comes in here. Scopper makes a statement that it seems that there's more than one of you with Supreme King Haki. Now, of course, they got to mess with Sanji, and he jumps up and says, "Who is me?" And Scopper immediately states to Zoro, he says, "You there, the swordsman, you seem quite at ease with it." He didn't say Sanji didn't have Conqueror's Haki. He just said specifically to Zoro, you seem more at ease with it. And Luffy is shocked that Zoro didn't notice this. Now, here's the interesting thing. Scopper says that he's shocked, he's flabbergasted. He says, unbelievable. Haki is a power that is only useful when you consciously control it. He said, how you expect to be able to support your captain, one of the emperors of the sea, without knowing that? And Zoro apologizes. Now, here's the interesting thing about that. When does Zoro awaken his Conqueror's Haki? Okay, no mention was made of him having, even though there might have been inferences that he might have it, but no mention was made of it up until Kaido. All right? So at that point, we can say legit confirmed Zoro has Conqueror's Haki. But Scopper here is saying that Haki is a power that's only useful when you consciously control it. Zoro was not conscious of his Conqueror's Haki at that time. So is that to say that when he left that scar on Kaido, that was done either with just his advanced armament? Basically, was that just done with advanced armament, but not Conqueror's Haki? Because Kaido could have noticed that Zoro had Conqueror's Haki, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was applied in that strike. He might have even just awoken it at that time, which is to mean that if he consciously controlled his Conqueror's Haki, that strike may have been even more damaging than it actually was. If we're saying that it's useful when you're aware of it, when you're conscious of it. Again, which is to say, if you're not conscious of it, can you use it to its full potential? I'm going to say no. And that's to say that man is a beast. He could be even more of a beast than he is right now. Because at this point, he would have to consciously use that Conqueror's Haki and apply it externally to a strike. If it's a flying strike, if it's a direct slice, whatever. My assumption is that when he struck Kaido, he just struck him with an advanced armament and maybe awakened it at that point. Because, again, Luffy never made a comment of Zoro having conquerors at any time up until now, basically. And he says that what you didn't know is flowing out of you. He didn't say it has been flowing out of you. Maybe it's been flowing out of him since they left Wano or so. I don't know. That's speculation on my part, but that's interesting. Now, and it comes to Sanji, And he says, Gramps, what about me? And then we're interrupted by Harold and Loki speaking. And then you have this panel of Sanji kind of like surprised, or so we don't get to see his face, but his mouth's gas, and he looks kind of maybe there's some urgency to him. My thought is Scott Patel is told him in the interim between those two panels, you have Conqueror's Hockey, but you haven't activated it, or you can't activate it until you do this, or it won't work for you until you do this. So there's some kind of stipulation as to how he can awaken or use Conqueror's Hockey. I mean, look, the parallels are there anyway. Sanji's a parallel to Scalper, so obviously he has or is going to awaken Conqueror's Hockey. That's not even a question. The question is, what did he tell Sanji? He might have told him, you says you can't do that until you do this, or it won't manifest itself until that happens. Anyway, so I think it's some kind of stipulation as to his Conqueror's Hockey that he just found out about. So there's that. So moving past that, we have the situation with Loki. He tells him that, look, I know how to fight the gods and knights. I fought them before. You need me to go up there? Aaron said no. Luffy says, yo, join my crew. And in that case, you would have to let him go because, Harrigan is subordinate to Loki. And if Loki is on his crew, then he really wouldn't have a say in the matter. He'd just say, yo, man, you're my underling. Let this dude loose because he's an underling just like you, basically. So, but Harrigan still refuses. He just cites the fact that this man's a murderer. He killed X amount of people. He killed my father. He's a traitor and he's sentenced here to die. Even Scalper tells him, yo, man, let that dude loose. And then he comes out and tells him, look, I was in Elbaf when the killing of the king took place and something weird was going down. It probably wasn't him. 14 years ago, if some funky was going down, let the dude loose. You need all the help you can get. So this takes us into our flashback where Harold puts his foot down and says, look, man, I'm tired of these games. Tell me exactly what happened 14 years ago. So we go into the flashback. Harold and Gerald come to the castle. They're summoned to the castle. They arrive to find the king basically being murdered by a gang of dudes running him through with spears, essentially. And at that exact same time, Gabon and Shanks are up somewhere else, wherever they are. And let me see, they're in the Sun World at Gabon's house. And they're chilling. And then we get another revelation, the fact that Shanks has a tattoo on his left arm, which got cut off by the Sea King, the king of the coast. Again, speculation is he lost that arm on purpose. Because if there's a lot going on with that. So if Shanks, if we know his brother is Shamrock. Okay, so he's Fingerland's son, twin brother is Shamrock. So did Gold Roger find him at God's Valley, rescue him, and he has been put on the path to be the next Joy Boy? But again, speculation is that he was supposed to be the next Joy Boy, didn't need the Gama Gama no Mi. Luffy did instead. And so Luffy is on, so he set Luffy on the path, or is backing Luffy to be on the path to be the next Joy Boy and take out evil. That's the speculation at this point, and I don't have a problem with that. It could be a situation because there's a lot that goes into that. If he Shanks Gaban tells him that you're a child of fate, Shanks don't bother thinking over the tricky little details. So he's a child of fate. There's some destiny attached to Shanks that he may have rejected. He said that he just wanted to be a laid back pirate with Buggy sailing the seas and doing piratey stuff. So maybe he rejected that fate and Luffy happened to eat the Gumma Gumma no Mi before Shanks could. Maybe he was just postponing it as long as he could, or he was never going to eat it and just kept it, stole it from the world government, and was going to keep it for whatever reason. And then Luffy happened to eat it. There's some speculation that he planned for Luffy to eat it, which I don't agree with, basically, because why would he be shocked when he did eat it? I mean, who would he be trying to fool at that point? It seems like, but then again, at the same time, the argument is why would you leave the fruit, the most important devil fruit on the planet, unattended, um, open in an open chest, just sitting over there for anybody to eat? Forget Luffy. Some clown off the street could have said, "Oh wow, what's this?" Oh, and that's it. So there's a lot that goes into that. I would like to think that Luffy, the fruit, found its way to Luffy because they say that devil fruits have their own will. So it found its way to Luffy. However, by whatever means he ate it, and now things are the way that they are. But then there's another flashback even farther back to when Harold was young, 109 years ago, was it? Further back, yeah, 109 years ago. So we're going to go into the history of Harold. So a flashback inside of a flashback, which is, crazy, but there it is. So just to summarize, Elbaf is in imminent danger. The God's Knights are running amok. Emu is doing whatever Emu wants to do. And we're flashing back to find out the history of Harold's murder, which will eventually vindicate Loki, and he will be let loose. That's a given. And at that point, we're going to have, no, I forgot to mention Sanji, Zoro, and who else was it? Sanji and Zoro, they've gone up to the Sun World with some other giants or whatever. So they've gone up. Harold stayed behind with, not Harold, Harold and Luffy stayed behind to hear Loki's story. I think Gerd went up with them. Chopper, of course, stays behind because he's a plushie and doesn't need to be involved in any of these battles. So the stage is set. Now, Emu's power is extremely broken, but it clearly is not unconquerable because Mary Joie is in flames. If Dragon is the one attacking Mary Joie, that means the Emu's power doesn't work on Dragon because if it did, Mary Joie would not be in flames. So the Revolutionary Army, if indeed the Revolutionary Army is attacking Mary Joie, that means that there's some counter to that ability. And another interesting thing is with Elbath itself. It seems to operate on some level of time dilation. Because going back to Shanks and Scopper's conversation, Shanks made the statement that it's been a while since he had shared a bath with Shanks. And what's it been? 3 years, he says. Gabon makes the statement, it's been 3 years. And Shanks is like, are you kidding? It's been 10 years since the captain died. So there might be a situation of time dilation with Elbath. I don't know if it's based on the whole time dilation thing. Time slows down around big objects. Um, intense gravity warps time, space, and time close to big objects is slower than time away. Time dilation. I don't know. It could be, but if that's the case, that makes things a little bit more interesting because time in Mary's Raw might be further ahead than time in Elbath. So when did that attack take place? But it seems to have been taking place, you know, concurrently. I don't know because that's going to be a piece of work. That's going to be a piece of work because if time is runs slower in Elbath, then we could have a time skip coming out. So when the straw hats leave, X amount of time may have passed, and that could screw things up. But it could also mean that whatever training that they do in the LBAF, because they're gonna have to do some level of training to get the rest of the crew up to speed to be able to fight the guys nice. People are gonna have to unlock hockey, at least Sanji, Robin, Usopp is probably going to have to get armament and some other stuff. I don't know. Maybe Chopper will learn how to fight better or whatever. But some level of power buffs is coming, and it might be time related on the way out. So I'm curious to see how that works. But I rambled long enough. That's just my impressions. It's loose impressions of chapters 1152, 1151, and 1152. So that's it. Let me know your impressions, all of that. That's it for Manga Monday. Look forward to next week with 1153 and the new chapter next week. So that's it from the Crisis Corner. Until next time, stay loose.